Scott moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House File number 548 be recalled from the Committee on Public Safety, Finance, and Policy, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott, to your motion.
Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker, that is my motion, House File 548. If you haven't read it, it talks about ineligible persons transfer a firearm to ineligible persons. I'd ask for a roll call, and then, Madam Chair, I would love to explain further.
Representative Scott requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Scott.
Speaker Hortman and members, in 2019, I introduced House File 2423, this same bill. In 2021, House File 346, really early bill introduction numbers if you notice there. And this year, House File 548, same bill. Here we are, 5 years after the initial introduction of this bill, to hold people accountable who are illegally transferring firearms to known felons. The Star Tribune article today should have hopefully given everybody in this body pause, because we found out, and we had these suspicions, but the person that provided, the person that shot our 3 first responders in Burnsville was not supposed to have firearms. In fact, he pleaded with the courts a couple years before this incident, asking that those rights be given back to him, and he was denied. But instead, someone went out and purchased 5 firearms and gave them to him. There are text messages showing the conversation between them as to what firearms he wanted, and she went out and purchased them for him. And the really sad part about all this is that it was all done in the last year. In fact, the 2 firearms used on February 18th were purchased on January 5th and January 25th, respectively. Members, we had the opportunity last year, you took my amendment to add this bill to the Public Safety Omnibus. It hit the cutting room floor. So here we are, a year later, 3 dead first responders, and multiple other victims, I might add. I've been saving articles of other folks that have been killed at the hands of someone that obtained a firearm illegally that should not have had a firearm, a felon in possession. Our 3 first responders might very well, as other victims as well, might very well be alive today had this bill passed 5 years ago. It's time to quit with the excuses, members. We've got to do the right thing on these gun laws and stop punishing law-abiding people and get at the real criminals, the real people that are causing death and serious injury. Members, I urge your support to suspend the rules. We can take this up right now. Let's pass it, and let's be done with it. Let's get this on the books. I ask for your support.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to say that we should vote no on suspending the rules, because as you all know, we are not through the committee process yet. We still have the policy deadline coming up. There are still bills that we are considering putting on, and Representative Scott probably saw that we requested a fiscal note on this bill, and we just got that back to verify that there is no cost. But we are hearing a number of gun bills in our committee. I'll note that the article article that you mentioned also talked about how the straw purchaser purchased weapons of war, AR-15s. There are many things that we need to do when it comes to guns. We've heard a safe storage bill. We've heard reporting lost and stolen firearms. We've heard about local control over other guns. Today in committee, we created a task force specifically to look at the issue of domestic violence and abusers who have guns and shouldn't, and how we can make sure that those guns get out of their hands. I am willing to consider any and all proposals, and we're still doing that. We're coming up to deadline, and we will be announcing the rest of our schedule soon, so we don't need to suspend the rules now. Thank you.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We hear and often hear from your side of the aisle, we have to do something about guns. Here is your opportunity. We just heard from the chair that there is zero fiscal cost to this. We heard last year that this was put into the bill, so you all have already voted for this. You have. And I would like to remind you of the studies that have been done. North of 89% of all guns used in the commission of a crime are obtained illegally, and certainly a subset of those are straw purchases. And a straw purchase, by definition, is when a person knowingly purchases a gun for a known prohibited person. That's the example that Representative Scott just gave. We can agree and have agreed, your side has agreed, that this is a good piece of legislation since it was in the bill. The chair has already put it into her bill. So why do we have to bring it back to committee when it was already in your bill in the omnibus? You know, members, it is for our side, it is very difficult to understand how you can give something a thumbs up by assigning your vote to it and then take it out of the bill. But even more so, it is confusing to me, who, yes, I am a very pro-Second Amendment legislator. You've heard me talk about the gas and sip. The gas and sip is where straw purchases get consummated to the prohibited person. So they will go behind unnamed gas station, because I don't ever want to impugn our existing gas stations, and a bag of cash will be given for illegal guns. Or, as in the case that Representative Scott just shared with you, a family member or a romantic interest will purchase components or a gun and knowingly give it to a prohibited person. You know, I remember when I served on the Public Safety Committee, the former Hennepin County Attorney, Mike Freeman, told us, and I don't often have my jaw fall open, well, I do when I read bills on introduction, but in committee, my jaw fell on the floor when then Attorney Freeman said, it's hard to enforce these gun crimes and the penalties aren't big enough, so we just don't even prosecute them. And I will tell you that all the Republican members that were in that committee, we looked at each other in shock because we just heard the Hennepin County Attorney say, yeah, I'm just not that interested in prosecuting gun crimes. We should put this on the rolls. We should make this law so that possibly the current Hennepin County Attorney and all other 86 county attorneys will have another tool in their tool chest to say, in this particular case, we now know what happened. We now know the path of acquisition for the guns that killed these 3 first responders, and now we're going to hold you accountable. So in the truest sense of the word, Representative Scott, in the truest sense of the word, this is an urgency. This is an urgency by definition. And I would encourage you members, you've voted for it before because you all voted for the public safety bill, except our new member on your side. You've all voted for this. Bring this up, do it now, and give the county attorneys and other prosecutors the ability to hold straw purchasers accountable. That way, you don't have to, with a broad brush and a wide swath, go after law-abiding gun owners. You have the chance right now to do the right thing and hold straw purchasers accountable by voting green on Representative Scott's urgency. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
Madam Speaker, after the tragedy that happened in Burnsville, I was given a chance to do a radio interview. I was requested to do it. It wasn't my idea. For those of you that know me, I've never sought any kind of attention like that. But for the first time in my life, I gave an interview that was actually organized. And I had talking points. And my talking points were really simple. And I'm saying this because in the end, I'll explain. My 3 talking points were education. We have to educate the public for the family members and friends that are doing these purchases for someone that's prohibited and shouldn't have these weapons. Don't let them talk you into doing this because it's wrong and there's penalties for it. And the second part was information. We should be tracking this. I did a data request to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office after we had the discussion that Representative Nash was talking about. And lo and behold, if you look at the tracking, almost every case in Hennepin County was technically charged out. How many of them were followed up with after the long-form complaint was done was very little. And the third part that I had was prosecution. We have to follow through with the long-form complaints. The prosecution ties into the education. When people know that they're going to be held accountable, maybe they won't do that straw purchase. My preference would be that we wouldn't be prosecuting for the straw purchase after a tragedy. My preference would be that we would prosecute the people that aren't following the laws and creating these situations to start with as a discouragement to the next person. They don't want to be the one that's going to be dragged into court. That would be my preference. The prevention of the next incident that we had. And I bring this up because I had my 3 points, and I gave them, and I circled the wagon at the end, and I summated them. It's the first time I've ever listened and done what they did, or what they teach you in the interviews classes. I redid my points. I was so proud of myself. I didn't ramble for 20 minutes in the middle. And it comes out in the paper. One line, education and information. Didn't even bother to include prosecution. It's 3 sides that we have to have if we're going to make a difference. Members, vote green.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of Representative Scott's motion to suspend the rules and take this up right away. Members, this is such an urgency. We have been watching this for years. This is my 6th year in the legislature. When I first came to the legislature, I didn't know much about this issue, and there was a shooting that I heard about and looked into where 14 people were shot in St. Paul, and it was tied to a straw purchaser. So I talked to my police chief. I tried to figure out more what we could do to stop this gun violence, and I know all of you care about stopping gun violence. And he set me up with a meeting with the ATF and the FBI. And so we went through what federal statute does, what state statute does, and I said, what can we do? What is the number one thing we can do? And the ATF told me, make straw purchasers a felony in state law. That was really what they asked for. And so I was already a co-author on the Scott bill, then I've continued to support it. And last year, we did it in this body. We voted for making that happen, and then it came out in the conference committee. Members, how many more times are we going to have this conversation and go through this and watch the news? You've already voted for it. Let's get this done. There was a study, I didn't have time to print it out and share it on the floor, but just in 2021, there were 6 cases of straw purchasers involving multiple weapons purchases. One person purchased 47 guns. Another person, 118. Members, this is not, it sometimes is the one-off for a girlfriend, but it's also a racket. And we need to increase the penalties on this. We all care about ending gun violence. We all care about safer communities. So let's work together to pass this today so that we've increased the penalties and make our communities safer. It would materially make a difference. Please vote green.
The member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, Representative Scott, thank you for bringing this forward. This is an important issue. We have an issue where we have differences of opinions how we want to stop gun violence. One way is to ban all firearms, but that doesn't keep those who want to do destructive things from obtaining them. The best way to do that is to hold these people who are providing firearms for those not allowed by our current law to possess them accountable. I was floored when then County Attorney Freeman said, "Make it worth my time." Apparently for him, the lives of citizens of Hennepin County aren't worth his time to prosecute those at that time for straw purchases. Last year, we put this in the Public Safety Omnibus Bill. Now is the time to send it as standalone over to the Senate and have them decide what they want to do. We can stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this state or not. It's your choice. Or you can go after the law-abiding citizens of this state. It's one or the other. I want to stand up for the law-abiding citizens and hold those who commit crimes accountable to the full extent of the law, where county attorneys will actually prosecute for straw purchases. Now is the time to do it. Vote yes on the Scott amendment.
Discussion. The member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to add to this. You know, as a teacher, I always had consequences for bad behavior in my classroom. Tried to create incentives for my students to follow our rules and get along and so on, but there were always those consequences when they broke a rule significantly. And I think about in our own society, when somebody abuses our road laws and speeds, the speeder and the person driving the vehicle and speeds gets the penalty. They pay the ticket. The rest of us don't pay tickets and pay penalties and fines for that. When somebody drinks and drives, the penalties and restrictions go on the person who drinks and drives, not the rest of us. Or how about somebody who goes after a bank and robs a bank? The bank account holders don't get penalized for that or restrictions. The bank robber is the one who is held accountable. And this is the same way with people who commit crimes with guns. We need to have accountability for those who are criminals who commit crimes with guns. Straw purchases are perfect. Thank you, Representative, and Peggy, and the same Peggy as me, we're the Peggy team. But thank you, Representative Scott, for this bill. We should be penalizing greatly any crime that's committed with a gun. That's how you limit and reduce the amounts in crimes. So I'd say go after criminals. It seems like more and more we're letting criminals off. We're giving them lighter sentences, and we're going after law-abiding gun owners instead. So I very much support this. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, there absolutely is an urgency to address gun violence, and that's exactly why we finally advanced last session, after years of opposition, criminal background checks, red flag laws to do more to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. But members, this particular proposal, appreciate bringing it forward. We had the vote on the floor last year, has not had a committee hearing about this proposal. This proposal, there's a reason that it has a zero fiscal note, which it says that it's really not expected to be used even if this passes. And why would that possibly be? Well, because this law would require that the person know that the person they're buying guns for is actually ineligible. And I can tell you, members, as a prosecutor, it's very rare that that kicks in. Now, when it does, as it certainly did in the case of the Burnsville shooting, then in fact the straw purchaser is charged, and that's exactly what happened. The person who purchased that AR-15 has in fact been charged in federal court and is going to be held liable. They're going to be held accountable. But the fiscal note came back on this proposal and has found that there's no cost because, in fact, it would extremely rarely be used because it is very rare that, in fact, you can prove the person knows. I heard a number of comments talking about how there's a county attorney a number of years ago who said, oh my goodness, yeah, we don't charge this. The reason is because it's not a felony. The county attorneys, in fact, cannot charge. That particular county attorney in Hennepin was not able to charge this crime. It was a gross misdemeanor. It is a gross misdemeanor. Now, should it possibly be changed? Perhaps. We're going to have a committee process, work our way through. It has not had a committee hearing. But the idea that there is an urgency about this proposal, that in fact, through the fiscal note is found, in fact, that it could not be used, that to my mind does not make any sense. Let the process play out, let it work its way through. Unfortunately, as Chair Moeller referenced, there was, fortunately, there was a discussion today in the Public Safety Committee about a proposal to have a look at how we can ensure that firearms are taken out of the hands of domestic abusers, what we can do on that. And sadly, the minority on the committee offered an amendment to keep that but remove any reference to firearms and to not pursue that. I'd ask folks to take a look at that committee hearing. I don't believe that the moving forward on this is the right way to go, is not the right thing to do in the committee today. I'm glad we voted that amendment down. And members, we should certainly vote this down as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Stearns, the member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
To quote President Reagan, there you go again. Finish the rest of what I said in committee, Representative Pinto. What I said was, we agree, we want to add to it, and because this is important, we think we should have Bill 699 brought to the floor and have a hearing. We don't need a task force that will put things off for a year and kick the can down the road. I said that we wanted to move this forward now. We've got a bill ready to go that Representative Scott put up last year and cannot get a hearing that would accomplish everything that you want in your task force. We didn't take away anything from what your task force wanted to do. We wanted to add to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is pretty simple. And Representative Pinto, thank you for making the case for why this is important. It's not a felony right now, so county attorneys can't prosecute it. That's what this bill fixes. It makes it a felony, so county attorneys both can prosecute it and will prosecute it. And don't talk to me about the process. The process was we as a House voted this into the omnibus bill last year, and the all DFL conference committee dropped it with no good explanation for why. This bill has been around, as Representative Scott pointed out, year after year after year. And the problem is that the majority's priority in dealing with gun crimes is to punish the objects or the victims of gun crimes and not to go after gun runners. This bill says the priority is if you are running guns, if you are circumventing the background check laws, if you are circumventing the felon in possession laws, if you are running guns, that is a crime that we will prosecute and punish at a state level, that our state prosecutors can punish, instead of having to wait around for Andy Lugar to clean up their mess. We need to fix this. We should have fixed this last year. We should have fixed it in 2019, Representative Scott. We should have fixed it a long time ago. But this is real simple. If you learned anything from what happened in Burnsville, make straw purchasing a felony so that our state prosecutors can prevent the next Burnsville. Vote yes.
The member from Stearns, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. And Representative Scott, thank you for your tenacity in continuing to bring this forward. This is very important. Members, we could have had this taken care of in 2019, and we didn't. But I'm grateful that we did pass it off this House floor just last year. Unfortunately, as you have heard from my colleagues, it was stripped out in conference committee. and that was wrong. But this is the important thing that we can do today. And I appreciate Representative Pinto bringing forward the fact that it is rarely used. That's why the county attorney had mentioned not being able to prosecute that and making that exact point. Let's raise it to a level of felony. Let's not wait any longer. We are already 6 years behind the process, looking back at 2019. We are 6 years late on this. And citizens and law enforcement have paid the price because of the delay in this chamber not increasing the penalty for straw purchases. We know that protecting citizens and the men and women that protect our communities and keep us safe every day is a priority. And this is the opportunity that you have in this chamber to vote green, declare the urgency, let's move this bill on, and the Senate can choose what they want to do with it. And I want to make one thing clear. This is not about infringing the rights of law-abiding citizens. This legislation solely targets criminal activity and those who knowingly circumvent the laws that exist, and it makes our communities less safe. This does not have to take long on this House floor to do the right thing. Please vote green. We can declare the urgency, hear the bill. You've already heard testimony in favor of it. It would not have to be repeated. And then you can choose when it comes to the vote on the actual bill, whether or not you want to vote for it again and support the right thing here. Let's increase the penalty on straw purchases, something that criminals do when they know they are doing the wrong thing. And Representative Pinto, if it is rare, then let's stop it from happening. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Madam Speaker, and thank you. Members, when I started here several years ago, there were several issues that I worked with members on the other side of the aisle, and we were able to accomplish great things. This bill should be something that is a bipartisan thing. It should have passed many years ago. And I dare say that had it been the idea of one of your members, that it would have been law by now. And that's really sad because a lot of people have died in the meantime because this law wasn't raised to the level of a felony and these people weren't held accountable. Maybe it would be better if somebody else, Representative Berg or somebody else, authored the bill. Maybe it would pass. I don't know. It's so simple. It's so simple. You voted for it last year. It's not rocket science. But if you really, really want to do something about gun crime, then you'll pass this law. When I had this bill drafted in 2019, I also had the other bill drafted about a follow-up hearing, an emergency follow-up hearing after these folks that were domestic violence committers had been told by a judge that they had to surrender their firearms. And then not long after that, a woman was killed in southern Minnesota where her abuser was told he couldn't have his firearms, but there was nobody following up to make sure that it happened. And so the other bill that was talked about today requires an emergency follow-up hearing to make sure that those firearms are turned over. Members, this is common sense stuff. This is stuff we should all agree on. Let's not wait for another tragedy. Please vote green.
The clerk will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules. Will the clerk please call the names of the members who are voting remotely?
Carol.
Carol, aye.
Carol votes aye. Hussein.
Hussein, no.
Hussein votes no.
Wait, Carol wants to change his vote.
Carol.
One more time.
Carol, no.
Carol changes from aye to no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 66 nays, the motion does not prevail.